clinical psychology, and something I've never mastered, something I've wanted to do is a daily meditation practice. As I look around at all my friends that are successful and I listen to people that are successful, it seems like everybody has a meditation practice, except me and maybe some of you. So I'm hoping that today will change all of that. Okay. So please give a warm Inside Edge welcome to Ruth Cherry. Don't trip over all these cables.
Okay. I'm so happy to be with you this morning. This just feels like a fun group of people. It's just a fun room to be in. Thank you for this opportunity. I've always been curious about life. Why do some things work for one person and other things work for another person? So of course I wanted to study psychology. I got my doctorate in 1976. I earned my 3,000 hours of postdoc supervised experience. I got my license from the state of California after that. And I was so excited about being a licensed psychologist in California. I couldn't think of anything better in the whole world. And this is what we all do in our 20s, isn't it? We use our controllers, we get our academic degrees, we get our licenses, we set the groundwork for whatever field of endeavor we're interested in. If you want to be in a profession and chart your own path, if you want to be in business, part of an organization, or the most important work in the world, which is stay-at-home mom, we read. We see what others have done. We think. We listen to other people. We want to fit in. That's a group I want to belong to. How do they dress? How do they act? Where do they go? What do they talk about? I want to be part of that group. So our controller is the part of us that tells us what we should do. How do I fit in? Our controller tells us to have an external orientation. Look at how it's done now. I want to be part of that. I'm going to do that too. Our controller tells us to have a future orientation. We may not be where we want to be today, but think about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Think about your goals. Think about the future. Don't worry about today. And we do that. So our controller tells us to have an external orientation, a future orientation, and our controller tells us think. Don't feel. Don't lose it in front of your peers. Be appropriate and always be realistic. Be realistic. So it tells us to get in our heads. You're probably going to be worth more if you cut off some of your feelings, because really there's some parts of you, it's not going to help you at all if anybody knows about those places. So our controller is telling us to diminish ourselves, be less of who we are, and we will be more valuable. Okay, right there. So have an external orientation, a future orientation, think, don't feel, and be realistic. We do that in our 20s. We open our office, we hang out our sign, we establish ourselves, and we develop our reputation. In our 30s, we continue using our controller, and we can, because we have the energy, we have the drive, we have the dream. And we work our little hearts out, don't we, in our 30s, you know? And we're excited to do it. We're making a name for ourselves. We're fitting in, and this is exciting. But still, we're in our controller, an external orientation, a future orientation, be realistic, don't integrate your feelings. Well, we get to our 40s, and the rules shift a bit, don't they? In our 40s, those parts of us that we didn't want to see, that we didn't want to hear from, well, they're still there. We swept our feelings under the carpet, but they didn't die. They're still alive in there, and now they demand our attention. We can't get away from them. We have to pay attention to our feelings, and we learn the term inner world in a way we haven't known it before. Our inner world demands our attention. I didn't want to pay attention to those feelings, those bruised places in me. the childhood unresolved conflicts. Well, in our 40s, we have to pay attention to it. It's there. We acknowledge we have an inner world, and we pay attention to our inner world. We're not quite as driven. We've established ourselves in business. We can take some time off. So maybe we take Wednesday afternoons off to play golf. Maybe we take a watercolor class. We pay attention to our inner worlds, and we don't understand our inner worlds. We just know that we have to be still. We have to be with ourselves. We don't necessarily share this with anyone else. But we realize there are tugs inside us that we have to acknowledge. And we do. So in our 40s, we learn the word experience. Before that, goal orientation was important, thinking was important. Being a doer was important. In our 40s, in our 50s, experience becomes important. What does it feel like to be me? We've never asked ourselves that before. It didn't matter. We were doing something. We had goals to achieve. Now we say, how am I enjoying my life? Do I feel like I'm living my life? What's it like being me? And we focus on experience. And part of focusing on experience, part of acknowledging our inner worlds is learning, allowing. We don't know why we're doing what we're doing. We don't know why we have to be still. We don't know why we start meditating. But we have to allow what's inside just to be. And we value allowing. Before we valued achievement. Our 20s were about achieving. We're shifting gears. Now we practice allowing in our 40s and our 50s. We had wanted to diminish ourselves in our 20s, cut off our vulnerability, cut off the parts of ourselves we didn't want anyone to see. Now we don't listen to our controller as much. We want to integrate every part of ourselves. If it's alive in me, I want to know it. I don't care what it is. If it's living in me, I want to know it. Those pains, the depression, the childhood wounds that haven't quite been healed, I have to pay attention to that. I don't know why. I don't know how to do this. This isn't a problem I can fix. This is simply me experiencing being me. And that's what's important in our 40s and our 50s. Experience, allowing, and immediacy. Before it was the future. Now it's this second. This weekend, this second. Maybe we start to meditate. Meditation is a wonderful practice for knowing ourselves. Meditation isn't about making ourselves better. It's not about adopting an image. It's not about wearing long skirts. It's not about how we look or act. Meditation is remembering who we are. So we've talked about our controller. We've talked about our hero who wants to integrate all the parts of us. Now we're going to talk about our observer, the part of us that stays behind the observer window and notices our thoughts and our feelings on the other side of the observer window. I am not my thoughts and my feelings, but I see my thoughts and my feelings. And I don't judge them, and I don't react to them. But I notice them. I practice detachment. So we have a broader sense of ourselves in our 40s and 50s and 60s. We've talked about the controller in our 20s, the hero in our 40s, the observer in our 50s. We're integrating more and more parts of who we are. And we learn to embrace our vulnerability, that part of us that we've always hated, that in our 20s we hated, that we wanted to get rid of. We embrace our vulnerability. And when you hear the word vulnerability, think feelings, but you may also have an association to what that is in your life. That lifelong depression. You know, well, nobody has everything, and a whole lot of people are a little depressed, but it's an issue for us now. We look at our lifelong depression. We say, what's that about? I don't need to live with this. I want to look at this because we want the best for ourselves. We don't know what that means, but we know it's not denial. Sometimes we see people gaining weight in their 40s, and people say, well, your metabolism slows down. I think we gain weight in our 40s when we're resisting knowing who we are. We're eating to push down our feelings, to not be aware of our conflicts. But in this group, we're going to say yes. We're going to say yes to whatever our tugs are from inside. We're going to say, I want to know what that's like. And we move into that vulnerability. That scared us too much to move into before. We could talk about it. But in our 50s, our 60s, we can get to the basis of what's going on. We can actually see and experience some resolution with our vulnerability. And that's marvelously freeing and empowering. We didn't realize it, but in our 20s, we put ourselves in a box. We had some assumptions about how we had to be to make life work. We had to be less of ourselves. We had to think and not feel. We couldn't be vulnerable. We had to focus on our appearance. Now we can get past all that. The box collapses. We're freer, we're more flexible in our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, and beyond. The meditation helps us know ourselves in greater depth. Another wonderful spiritual practice that I'm sure some of you are doing is journal writing, which is a lot like meditation, but you do it with a pen in your hand. Look at that thought. Look at that feeling. Look at that. And we don't analyze. We don't solve problems. What we have learned to do is work with life simply by allowing life works with us. So what we have experienced inside, life responds to. We don't have to ask. There's not a magic word to say. We notice a partnership with life that we haven't noticed in our 20s, in our 30s, before this. So when we're meditating, we're aware of our consciousness. We're not thinking about behavior. We're not thinking about doing. We're not thinking about problem solving. Consciousness. We look at our thinking. We don't think. We look at our thoughts. We don't think our thoughts. So I did all this. I did this. I think everybody in this room did this. And then I got into my 60s. And 3 years ago, I was generously given the label of multiple sclerosis. And I was horrified. I was not expecting that. I was terrified. I was thrown off balance. In addition to being unbalanced physically, I was now thrown off balance emotionally. Like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and it's like, what world am I in? How did this happen? This isn't supposed to be me. This isn't what my life is supposed to be like. And I was totally confused. Maybe some of you know that after a diagnosis like that, there's a flurry of activity. There's the home health care nurses who are wonderful. The neurologist did brain MRIs. He's competent. I trusted him. I trusted that diagnosis. The home health care nurses came and said, we will be your advocates. We will support you. They showed me how to do injections. They talked about specialty medication. They said, lift your throw rugs, get a cane, rest often. And I respected them. They were very kind. But what I heard them say that they didn't verbalize was, we are your advocates now, and as you decline, we will continue to be your advocates. And after about 3 months, getting over the initial activity with this diagnosis, I said, I don't want to decline. I'm going to heal this. I wasn't going to fit into that box. Oh, there's no cure for MS. Oh, we've seen 1,000 other people decline. Oh, we know what's going to happen. And my reaction was no. No, you don't. You know? So I redoubled my commitment to meditation, more than redoubled. Because what else could I do? I didn't have any other resources. The greatest minds in the medical profession were telling me one thing and putting me in a box with a label. And bless their hearts, that was the best they can do. And I'm not critical of doctors, and I use doctors and appreciate doctors, but I didn't fit in that box, and I wasn't going to let that label define me. So embracing my vulnerability, sitting in meditation 45 minutes twice a day, doing my journal writing every day, I noticed some healing for me in my consciousness. What I wanted was, I'm not saying perfect walking, because I wasn't ever walking perfectly. I wanted good walking again. I wanted to walk well again. And I didn't necessarily need to tell anyone that. That's what I wanted, and it was unrealistic. That's what I wanted. So I'm meditating, I'm doing my journal writing, I'm affirming healing, I'm affirming good walking. And I noticed that my childhood psychodynamic conflicts were resolving, and that's a good thing, you know. Childhood's a little bit problematic for many of us when we're powerless, but I was seeing some resolution there. During one meditation, I had an image of barbed wire wrapped around my right leg, and as I resolved my conflicts with my mom, the barbed wire fell away, and my walking started to get better. As I resolved my psychological conflicts, my walking started to get better. It didn't get better slowly and gradually. It responded in chunks. As I was resolving issues psychologically, physically, my health improved. That was pretty interesting. That made me want to meditate. That was very reinforcing. I invited folks over to my house to meditate at noon every day. So I'm meditating in a group with folks. I lead a guided meditation for those who aren't sure about what their practice is or if they're focusing their concentration. And we meditate together, and it's healing for all of us, but mostly for me, I think. I really loved meditating with the group, and still do. We still do that. I noticed healing physically. When I say I want to heal I want my walking to heal, I don't know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to life. Life, help me in this. I don't know how to do it, but I want some help, and I don't feel a need to be realistic. Our controller tells us to be realistic in our 20s. I didn't feel a need to be realistic. I think that elements of my healing partly were my optimism. I believe I can heal because somebody else hasn't healed, because somebody else thinks, oh, everyone who has this label experiences thus and so. I didn't buy into it. I know I can heal, and I am healing. So it's my optimism. I think that I influence my experience. I don't think that that label knows more about me than my heart and soul, the core of who I am. My beingness, my person, influences my experience more than the label does. So I don't accept the label, and I don't identify with the label, and it doesn't define me. I think that helps my healing too. I feel a real sense of partnership working with life. When I'm committed to doing my inner work, when I embrace my vulnerability at the deepest levels inside me, when I am terrified, and I got to desperate many times, when I let myself feel that, life responds. I run into someone, I hear something, a door opens, and I hadn't seen the door before. Life responds, so there's this sense of partnership. I'm working with life. All I can do is focus on my consciousness in the second. That's all I can do. So that's what I do, focus on my consciousness in the second by meditating. So I developed a model, and I would like to check this out with you, for healing for all of us. And by healing, I mean transformation, moving into being all that we can be. And I have 5 steps in this self-developed model, ESPPM. So the first E is embracing your vulnerability at the deepest level possible. There is no place inside us we won't go, which does not mean that we're not terrified to go there. It's okay to be afraid. The anger can be overwhelming. The fear, the sadness, whatever it is that's lived inside you forever. Let's go to the very basis of what that is and stay present. Let's stay in meditation. Let's feel that as deeply as we can for as long as we need to. We have all the resources we need by our 60s. You know, what are we going to be afraid of? Oh, my feelings are going to be hurt? We don't advertise what we're doing, but we're not concerned about our reputations anymore. We have the strength to do this. So embracing our vulnerability. This is usually where I lose people. They say, I don't want to feel that. Too much for me. But we don't have any place for our controller. That was the first half of our life. The controller that said, don't feel, we don't need that anymore. The controller is relegated to taking care of the details of our lives. It manages our finance, it maintains our cars, gets us to our appointments on time. That's the only way we need our controller at this point. We need a deeper part of us now. Embracing our vulnerability, that's step 1. 2, the S is surrender. We practice surrender. Life, I don't know how I can get to where I want to go. Help me. Part of surrender is not being realistic. In our 20s, our controller told us to be realistic. I think part of our healing and growth and transformation is not being realistic. I want to walk really well. And I'm gonna. I'm getting better. I don't take the medication anymore. I'm doing better. And I know I'm going to walk more better. I'm going to walk more better. Because I've found the path. I feel what it's like to heal now. I've seen it with my meditations. I know when I'm on my path and I know when I'm resisting. I cannot be in my controller at all. This was a hard one for me to learn. I love being in my controller because my controller gives me something to do. Yeah, and it keeps me busy, and it's fun to have something to do to distract my attention. Because feeling how overwhelmed I am and how desperate I am is challenging. I'll do it, but it's challenging, but it's nice to have something to do. Well, there's no room in healing for the controller. So I had to put it to the side, and it took me, I'm embarrassed to tell you how long it took me to realize that and to get it. The controller's always telling me to exercise, swim, walk, do something, but that would just make me weaker. But I would persist because I knew that maybe I was just getting stronger. Maybe that's why my muscles were breaking down. But after more than 2 years, I had to say, listen, Ruth, do you see what's going on here? You have to acknowledge reality. And so I had to get my controller out of the picture altogether, which just left me with being available, being vulnerable, being available. Here I am, life. I'm showing up. I'm looking at my consciousness in the second. I have no idea what's coming next, but I really, really, really want to walk better. So the first letter, E, embracing our vulnerability to the deepest level possible. S, practicing surrender, which means also wanting something that's unrealistic. P, practicing presence, sitting in meditation. Because when we ask life to help us, it's not like being 3 and getting a Christmas present. You don't sit on the floor and wait for the present to come to you. If we don't have what we say we want, we are blocking it. Because when I say to life, please help me, life always, always, always says yes. Life is always there to support us. Always there to support us. And the first way it supports us is in showing us how we are blocking ourselves. By thinking, usually, is how we block our good from coming to us. By staying busy, by staying in our controllers. Life will show you how you're blocking yourself if you sit and practice presence. We have to listen. We have to listen for our guidance. Life is always trying to communicate with us. We have to listen. That's ESP. Embracing your vulnerability at the deepest level, practicing surrender, which involves not being realistic, practicing presence, listening for your guidance. The next PM, the next P is partnership. Trusting your partnership with life. Life is working with us. Life wants us to have what we want. Life will deliver to us what we want, but never in the way that we expect it to. We don't understand how life is working, but if we acknowledge our partnership, if we trust life, we don't criticize anything, do we? We don't say, well, you shouldn't have said that to me. How rude are you? We don't say that shouldn't have happened. We don't criticize anyone. No matter what happens, we say thank you because we're in partnership with life. Life is pulling us to our good, and we don't understand how, but we trust life. We trust life. So we're always going to be available. We practice availability in the second half of our lives. I am available for healing, so I'm going to cooperate with whatever life shows me. M is miracles. When we decide we want to live at the level of miracles, and life delivers miracles to us when we get out of the way, when we get our heads out of the way, when we stop thinking, well, then we're in for a real thrill, aren't we? Then we don't know what's going to happen. We expect the unexpected. We're constantly surprised, and we are delighted. I think we measure success in the first half of life, in our 20s, by our achievement, maybe by our income, maybe by how we compare to our peers. In the second half of life, we measure success by the moments we're delighted. What could be better? Watching life perform miracles around me, watching nature play with us. What a trip that is when nature is playing with us and you think, somebody really, really knows me. Somebody knows me better than anyone has ever known me. And that's exciting. So I had thought getting a diagnosis of MS was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But now I think it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because it's led me into living at a level of depth that I could not get to by willing it, by thinking it, by trying. It tore a hole in my heart getting that diagnosis, and that was exactly what I needed, to drop to this level of depth where I could appreciate reality at a deeper level. We're talking about reality. The controller deals with reality at a I can see it, I can touch it level, a behavioral level. When we meditate, we get into the observer. We see that reality is deeper than our thinking, deeper than our feeling. We keep meditating, we get to the isness. What is it to be me, Ruth? What's it like being me? That's a deeper level of reality. And there's another level of reality even deeper than that, which is, and it's hard to find words for this, but probably many of you know what I'm talking about, this sense of isness, of being, and I call it moving to my eternal center. We have a human center where our controller is prominent. We have an eternal center where we have always existed and always will exist. And simply by going to our eternal center, by spending time in our eternal center, by allowing, we show up, we practice availability, we allow, we are healed. We receive healing. Some people call this divinity. Some people call it unconditional love. Some people call it essence. Whatever word you want, it doesn't matter. It's moving to that level, experiencing that and being open to it. When we're saying to life, I'm along for the ride, and we do get miracles. We get miracles all the time. Life always responds to us. Life wants the best for us, and life is working with us. We're the ones who put the brakes on without knowing that we're doing that. So this is a fabulous way to live. It's fun, it's thrilling, it's open-ended. We don't know where life is going to take us, but we don't care because we trust. We trust. And I think that probably you have experienced what I'm talking about. And I would like to hear from you about your experiences, working with life, experiencing miracles, your openness, or your fear. Do you think you're blocking yourself? Do you think there's more good that wants to come to you and you're saying, I don't know? Or do you think you're saying, come on, come on, come on, I'm available? I'd like to hear from you. Anything you have to say?
You get the mic runners going?
And while you're thinking of your questions, my book, Accepting Unconditional Love, is a workbook for those of us who decide I'm going to operate at that level of miracles. I want miracles in my life. So it's a personal workbook for you to know how you are functioning, how you are open to accepting unconditional love, working at that level or not. My other book, Living in the Flow, Practicing Vibrational Alignment, is my story. 7 months of my journal writing, meditation instructions anyone can use, lots and lots and lots of psychology and spirituality articles that give us an intellectual context for healing. Most of my referrals in San Luis come from social workers, and they like to give this book to their clients because it shows them what it's like to be a client, to do your work as a client. So this is my vulnerability in this book.
Your talk, which I thought had me think of this experience that I had. It resonates with what you're saying. And in this experience, I didn't really do it. I imagined doing this, but I didn't really do this. But you'll get it as I share it. So I've been a swimmer my whole life. And when I was 9 and 10, I was worked out, competitive swimmer, and through college and still masters. And when you're training, like you do a workout, or the coach gives you a workout. But one time I was doing lap swimming. This was in La Jolla when I was in grad school at the La Jolla YMCA, which is up on the hill overlooking the ocean, and a nice. And I realized, and I got in the water, and I realized I could do it differently. I could get in the water and just do whatever I was told to do in the water. Mm-hmm. And a whole workout would be generated just by my listening, just by my following. And I didn't need to add anything to that. I didn't need to put any structure on it. And it would flow for the whole an hour or hour and a half. Now, I didn't actually do that, but I had the vision.
But isn't that comforting? Isn't that comforting to say, I don't have to think of every detail. If I show up, I'll be guided, yeah, and I'll be okay. Thank you. Thank you. Here's
This reminds me of a wonderful book that I've come across recently by Tasha Silver. It's called Outrageous Openness. And her thesis is that life is waiting to give you everything. You have to look for the clues. Mm-hmm. And this just somehow articulated something I had felt. But, seeing it in the book, my mind said, oh, you must be right. Somebody else thinks this. So I was looking for clues, and we had 2 cats. My husband and I had these beautiful cats for 18 years, and they each died within 2 months of each other. And I went up to the pet store. Oh, it was just before the last one died. I went up to get a comb because he was getting kind of matted. And I'm walking out of Petco, and here's these cats up for adoption. And there were these two little black and white cats, very much like the ones we had. And I thought, oh no, we can't do that. We're too old. But I'll ask Jack. So I asked him if he wanted to see these cats, and much to my surprise, he said, okay. So we both fell in love with these little kittens. And we got them. And we are too old for toddlers, but we have these two little kittens now that have just brightened up our lives. And they love to sit in his lap, and he's just so different. He's spent a great deal of time. He found an outfit that just makes cat toys, and he's busy ordering cat toys. So our living room looks like a kiddie daycare center. But it's just been wonderful, and I realized I was looking for clues. What does the universe want next? And there were these two cats.
Just what you needed, and you would not have thought that on your own.
Right.
But perfect for you. Thank you.
Actually, this is real simple. I just want to thank you because I feel right now as that I've been in a meditative state for this period of time that you've been talking. And
It
so
feels
that's
good.
been, of course. And yeah, you are a beautiful woman, and I get your presence. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can he keep the microphone? Keep going. Keep going. No, I think he's finished. It's like, okay, continue. Thank you. Meditation has saved my life, just saved my life. You know, I was born, and I'm sensitive. I think probably everyone in this room is sensitive, and it's a little challenging trying to be yourself and fit in the world and be sensitive. And the meditation has given me a way to be myself and be in the world, have a private life, and still be sincere and honest in my public life, you know, but to not lose my soul. And I don't want to miss meditating. Life doesn't sparkle when I don't meditate. Life sparkles when I meditate. My days sparkle. So if you don't have a meditation practice, I greatly encourage you to get one. Go out and buy one. Go find one somewhere. Yes.
I just want to ask, what is your meditation practice?
Well, I sit down, I close my eyes. For a minute, I focus on my in-breath and my out-breath just to get my attention focused on this second. I get behind the observer window, and I get anchored in the second, and then I just notice. And it's pretty interesting, because it's like sitting at a theater watching a movie. I'm just watching this, and I watch that go by, and I watch that go by, and I watch this go by. And I don't think, and I don't draw any conclusions. I just notice. I stay in my observer, and I notice. And over the course of the time, I meditate for 45 minutes twice a day. I feel myself drawing deep, if you want to call it deeper inside. What I mean is the thoughts aren't quite as rapid, you know, the feelings aren't quite as intense. And I move to a place of peace that clearly I did not manufacture, that I didn't have anything to do with creating. But when I can move into that peace and simply be, it's like being carried in a fast-moving stream. It's very fun, and it seems effortless, although I am focusing on staying present to the moment. But it feels like being carried. And then some days the meditation is just, oh yeah, come back to this second. Oh yeah, come back to this second. It's just pulling myself back. Some days it's just work. But realizing that I have that depth to me, and I think every human has that depth. We go to the universal from moving deeply into the personal. That's why I think I can generalize this to all of us and to everyone. That we have that peace at our center, at our deepest center. That's what we all want, isn't it? We want unconditional love. We want that peace. It's there for us. But we have to work to get there. And sometimes it takes a year or 2 or 3 to feel like you know what you're doing. It's been lovely being with you all. I've appreciated this opportunity very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
I appreciate it.